All right, moving forward, we have number 20 Kentucky on the road at number 1 Georgia. The Bulldogs are 14.5-point home favorites, and this game carries an over-under of 48.5. This game kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern Primetime on ESPN. Georgia has won 13 consecutive meetings, and get this, I had to double check this one. They've allowed one single offensive touchdown against Kentucky in the last 4 meetings. Uno. They haven't. Kentucky scored one offensive touchdown since 2018. Yet Georgia's 0-4 against the spread in those games. It makes no sense, but it is true. Kentucky comes in after Ray Davis just rushed for 280 yards on Florida. That was one of the more surprising results of the weekend. Hey, guess what, Kelly? It was an unranked team favored over a team ranked between 20 and 25 with an outright win. So hey, should have followed my gut on that one. And of course, Georgia on the other side, they edged out a win against rival Auburn. They allowed 219 yards on the ground. I do take stock in the fact that they allowed 219 on the ground, but look, let's settle down with, well, they barely beat Auburn. Is Georgia even any good? Guys, this is the oldest rivalry in the SEC. These two teams hate each other. Of course, it's going to be played to a draw, especially on the road in Auburn. Jordan-Hare is not an easy place to play. So I don't take too much stock in the point differential and the game flow there. I think Auburn just played their butts off, but the 219 on the ground, that is something I'm looking into. That's actually more than they allowed in the first 3 FBS games combined. So, yeah, big day for the Tigers. Georgia is 20th in rushing success rate on defense. Kelly, when's the last time they dipped that low? They're usually 1, 2, or 3 at the absolute worst. I thought Liam Cohen would come into Kentucky and turn the UK offense around, but that just kind of hasn't been the case. It turns out you need a really good offensive line to compete in the SEC. And their offensive line is good, but it's not as good as it was in 2021 contending for the Joe Moore Award. Their biggest issue right now for the Wildcats, 40% success rate on 3rd and 4th downs. That's 86th nationally. And Georgia, on the other hand, is 9th in late down success rate allowed. Being able to stuff opponents on late downs gives you more of a confidence to punt the ball away when you have a lead and trust your defense rather than going for it. And look, those are words I almost never say. I'm big into go for it. You get an extra down, especially in close games like that. But when you have a defense that can get off the field on 3rd and 4th downs, it gives you more confidence to punt. Based on game flow, Georgia minus 14.5, you expect a lead. Maybe it's still competitive. I'd actually lean under 23.5 second half points. Seems like where Georgia can get the ball, move it on late downs, stop, get Kentucky off the field and kind of milk that clock. On the other side, on offense, Georgia has minus 8.6% rush rate over expected. Have to give a shout out to Parker Fleming at Stats of War on Twitter, who shares these excellent breakdowns. That includes rush rate over expected. That's where I pulled that from. That is the 18th lowest in the country. So they're actually throwing it much more than anticipated. Their backs have been banged up. You saw it against Auburn that, who did they go to when the game was online? Brock Bowers. Let's get the Heisman talk going, not just because I have a 75-1 ticket on that, but because he genuinely is one of the better players in the country. Ladd McConkey returned for them last week. DeJuan Edwards looked really strong after missing some time. He got in the end zone. So Georgia is getting healthier.
And Brett, you talked about Brock Bowers there. And yeah, man, I remember we talked about him in the preseason. As you know, if you're looking for someone position that hasn't won it before, someone a little off the radar, you can get better odds on. We thought we knew he was going to be the best player on what we thought was maybe going to be the best team. Maybe they're not the best team, but they're still an undefeated 2-time defending national champion. Heisman voters like to do something new, maybe. Yeah, he's certainly playing like a top 5, top 10 NFL pick. And I know he plays tight end. It's not a premium position. I think he'll probably go in the top end of the first round because he has been that good. I have Georgia minus 15.5 in this one. It's an 87% win expectancy. While Georgia might be number 1 in the AP poll, Brett, I have the Bulldogs number 10 in my most deserving rankings. They currently grade out number 11 in record achievement and number 13 in relative scoring margin. They were number 18 last week, so the win at Auburn certainly bolstered that resume a little bit. From a power rating perspective, though, which is more important here, Georgia has been downgraded a full touchdown since the preseason. That's the 5th largest decrease in power ratings in the FBS. Baylor and Pitt are the only Power 5 teams whose power rating has fallen further this season, Brett, for me in the model. Georgia's currently power rated at season lows across the board. 7th overall, 12th on offense, 9th on defense. You talked about when's the last time we saw this Georgia defense where they are. It's not been great for Georgia relative to how good this team has been each of the last 2 years. Now, the good news for Georgia is they don't have to be better than the 2 teams that they've been the last 2 years. They just have to be better than the teams that are on their schedule this year. And as things stand right now, the numbers still project them to be just that. In the preseason, though, there wasn't a single regular season game in which my numbers made Georgia a single-digit favorite. Now, the Week 11 game in Athens against Ole Miss and the Week 12 game in Knoxville both have projected spreads of less than a touchdown. Georgia's still a favorite, but it's not just single digits, it's less than a touchdown. It is fair to question the schedule difficulty for Kentucky to date, as the Wildcats have jumped out to that 5-0 start. Their first 3-game winning streak against Florida in more than 70 years.
How about it?
Hey, yeah, celebrate it, Kentucky fans. What you got going on? People have said this, and I believe it. Mark Stoops has one of the best jobs in America. You get paid like an SEC football head coach. Your expectation is not that of the typical SEC program, and you're not Vanderbilt. Like, you have the ability. We'll see how this changes as they get away from divisions. Kentucky, I would say, being in the East, you've had a better chance to rack up some conference wins. Let's see how that changes, if at all, as they move away from division in 24. But Stoops has one of the best jobs in the country because of those reasons, and he is certainly taking advantage of it. Kentucky does have 0.8 more wins than I projected at this point, but the schedule gets real starting this week. Only 2 remaining games. That's versus Missouri next week and at Mississippi State in Week 10 that my numbers project Kentucky as a favorite. With the number 12 defense nationally, Kentucky does present the stiffest test that Georgia has or will face on that side of the ball all regular season. The offense has been better than expected. They've risen from number 63 to number 47. But my model expects that to be the mismatch in this game that makes the difference. It's just not enough points in this one for the Kentucky offense by my numbers. The fact that they're on the road makes it all the more difficult here. I have Georgia minus 15.5. It's a 13% chance that Kentucky takes the lead in the SEC East. Here's an interesting, quirk about the numbers and how projections work moving forward, Brett. So pretty straightforward for Georgia. 79% chance to make it to Atlanta. That's by far the best in the East. If they win, it goes up to an 83% chance, which is still number one. If they lose, yes, they're behind Kentucky now in the standings. Yes, Kentucky has the head-to-head tiebreak. My numbers still make Georgia the favorite in the East, so even with a loss, 56% chance to make it, more likely than not to make it. That has everything to do with the fact that Georgia moving forward, their power rating projects them to be the favorite in these games. Kentucky, as I mentioned, they're not projected to be the favorite. Now, power ratings are going to change. If Kentucky pulls off the win here, Kentucky's most likely, unless it's the flukiest win of all time, Kentucky's power rating will rise and Georgia's will fall, given the discrepancy they have and what it would take for that outcome to happen. So those numbers are going to change slightly, but based on the information we have now, using current power ratings, which, again, there's a slightly flawed method to that, but that's the best we can do, Georgia's still the favorite. Kentucky, currently the second favorite in the East, but it's only an 8% chance. If they win, that jumps all the way up to 28% chance. If they lose, you can probably forget it. You're behind Georgia. You lost the tiebreaker, and you're not projecting to be a favorite in as many games as them moving forward. So this is interesting. Kentucky is the threat right now to Georgia in the East, and again, that probably has a lot to do with the fact that they and Missouri are the only 2 teams that are still undefeated in conference play. In conference play. No, excuse me, overall in conference play as well, too, though. So this game's big. Georgia's going to be the favorite. I expect them to get it done. Kentucky needs this one if they want to make a surprise run to Atlanta, and even if they get this one, there's still more work to be done.
We have not seen Georgia really throttle anybody this year, at least expectation. And in recent histories, these games aren't runaway blowouts in favor of the Dogs either. That's why I like that second half under look. If Georgia can maintain a 2 or 3 score lead and just sit on the football and take the air out of the game and run some clock down, stop Kentucky on those late downs, like I mentioned. Usually teams that are behind are then forced to throw the football more, of course, because you got to play catch up. And that is not Kentucky's strength. They're currently 92nd in passing success rate in the nation. Find the 24 if you can for that second half, but I'd probably still take the 23.5. You can find it minus 105 at DraftKings.